I never thought the worst moment of my life would happen over meatloaf and mashed potatoes. There I was, sitting at my own dinner table, in the house I'd owned for 32 years, when my son Brandon slammed his fist down and shouted, "Dad, either you give Courtney your room, or you pack up and get out of here right now. This is ridiculous. She needs space." His face was red, veins bulging in his neck. My daughter-in-law smirked behind her wine glass. I set down my fork, looked at my son's twisted expression, and felt something inside me go very quiet and very calm. I stood up from the table slowly. Brandon's face showed shock, like he'd expected me to argue or plead. Courtney's smirk widened into a satisfied smile. "All right, Brandon," I said, keeping my voice level. "I'll be out by tomorrow." "Wait, what?" Brandon blinked. "You're just going to leave?" "You told me to, so I will." I walked to my bedroom and closed the door. My hands were steady as I pulled my old leather suitcase from the closet. I'd lived in this house since Brandon was 3 years old. I'd raised him here after his mother died when he was 12. I'd made every mortgage payment on time for 3 decades. And now my 35-year-old son, who I'd let move back in 2 years ago when he claimed he was having business troubles, was throwing me out of my own home. I started packing, clothes first, then important documents from my desk drawer. That's when I saw the bank statements. They were mixed in with some old tax returns, statements I didn't remember opening. My savings account at First National. I pulled them out and sat on the edge of my bed. The balance showed $12,342. I stared at the number. That couldn't be right. 2 years ago, I'd had $87,000 in that account. My retirement cushion, earned from 35 years running my own plumbing business. My hands shook as I grabbed my laptop. I hadn't checked my accounts online in months. Brandon always said I worried too much about money, that I should relax and enjoy retirement. I'd trusted him. Stupid. I logged into my online banking. The transaction history loaded. My stomach dropped. Transfer after transfer. 5,000 here, 8,000 there, 12,000, 6,000. All going to an account ending in 7493. I clicked through my saved payees. Account 7493 belonged to Brandon Riley. $74,700. Gone. Transferred over 18 months using my password. A password I'd never given him but that he must have figured out. It was his mother's birthday. I'd used it for years. I took screenshots with my phone. Every transfer, every date, every amount. My chest felt tight, but I kept my breathing steady. I'd learned a long time ago that panic doesn't solve problems. It was 11:30 at night. I could hear Brandon and Courtney laughing in the living room, probably celebrating their victory. I kept packing. Clothes, toiletries, my father's old pocket watch, the photo albums I'd made of Brandon growing up. I left the furniture. I left the dishes. I left almost everything. By 3 in the morning, my car was loaded with 4 suitcases, 2 boxes, and a lifetime of memories I could carry. I wrote a note and left it on the kitchen counter. "I'm out. Don't contact me." Then I drove away from the only home I'd known for 32 years. The highway was empty at 4 in the morning. I drove south, no particular destination in mind, just away. The sunrise caught me somewhere around mile marker 112, and I realized where I was heading. Seabrook, a little coastal town where I'd vacationed as a kid with my parents. I hadn't been back in 40 years, but I still remembered the white sand beaches and the sound of waves at night. I reached Seabrook by 9 in the morning. The town had grown, but still kept its small-town charm. Weathered storefronts, a main street with American flags hanging from lampposts, the smell of salt air mixing with coffee from a corner cafe. I parked downtown and walked until I found a real estate office. Hammond Realty, the sign said. Inside, a woman about my age with silver hair and kind eyes looked up from her desk. "Help you?" she asked. "I'm looking to buy a house," I said. "Something small. Near the beach if possible. I can close fast." Her eyebrows rose. "How fast?" "A week. Cash offer." Her name was Dorothy, and 20 minutes later we were in her car driving through residential streets 2 blocks from the ocean. She showed me 3 properties. The first was too big. The second needed too much work. The third was perfect. A pale yellow cottage with white trim, maybe 1,300 square feet. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a front porch with a swing. The hardwood floors creaked in that good way old houses do. Big windows in the living room faced east, toward the ocean. You couldn't quite see the water, but you could hear it. "It's been on the market 7 months," Dorothy said. "Owner moved to Arizona to be near family. He's motivated. Listed at $95,000. I walked through each room. The kitchen was dated but functional. The bathroom had old pink tile, but everything worked. The bedrooms were small, but I didn't need much space. The porch was what sold me. I could see myself sitting there in the evening, watching the sun set, listening to the waves. "I'll offer $85,000, I said. "Cash. 7-day close if he can do it." Dorothy's eyes widened. "Mr. Riley, are you sure you don't want to think about this?" "I'm sure. I'm 67 years old, Dorothy. I don't have time to think anymore. I have time to act." She made the call right there. 3 hours later, I had an accepted offer. The seller was thrilled to have a quick cash buyer. Dorothy was thrilled to have an easy commission. I was just tired. I checked into the Seabreeze Motel, a modest place 3 blocks from the beach. $49 a night. The room was clean enough. I lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling. And for the first time since dinner, I let myself feel it all. The anger, the betrayal, the grief. My son had stolen from me. My son had disrespected me in my own home. My son had chosen greed over family. And I'd been so focused on being a good father, on supporting him, on not being a burden, that I'd let him walk all over me. But I was done being walked on. I called my attorney. Marcus Webb had handled my business affairs for 20 years. He answered on the 3rd ring, his voice gravelly with sleep. "Riley, it's 7 o'clock on a Saturday night. You better be bleeding." "Worse," I said. "I need your help." I told him everything. The dinner, the eviction from my own house, the stolen money. Marcus swore loudly and creatively. "We file a police report first thing Monday," he said. "Elder financial abuse, theft, and we get your house back. You still own it, right?" "Technically, yes. I'm still on the deed." "Then Brandon is trespassing. We can have him evicted." I thought about it. Part of me wanted immediate revenge. But another part, the part that had built a successful business by being patient and strategic, saw a different path. "Not yet," I said. "Let's watch what happens first. I want to see what Brandon does next." Marcus was quiet. Then, "You think he'll do something stupid?" "I know he will. He always does." "All right. But Riley, document everything. Keep records. And be careful. People who steal from family don't suddenly develop a conscience." I promised I would. We hung up. I lay in the motel bed listening to the distant sound of waves and thought about my son. Somewhere along the way, I'd failed him. Or maybe he'd failed himself. Either way, the Brandon I'd raised was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. But I couldn't fix that now. I could only save myself. The next week passed in a blur of paperwork. Inspections, title searches, insurance policies, wire transfers. Dorothy moved heaven and earth to close in 7 days. On Friday afternoon, I signed the final documents and received the keys to my cottage. My cottage. I said it out loud, standing on the front porch. My cottage. It felt good. I bought a bed, a couch, a kitchen table with 2 chairs. Basic stuff from a local furniture store that delivered same day. I bought sheets and towels and dishes. I bought a coffee maker and a toaster. I bought groceries and stocked the refrigerator. By Sunday evening, I was moved in. Monday morning, I took my first walk on the beach. The sand was cool under my bare feet. Seagulls circled overhead. A man about my age jogged past with his dog. A woman sat in a beach chair reading a book. The ocean stretched out forever, gray-green and peaceful. I walked for an hour, collecting shells and letting my mind empty. When I got back to the cottage, I made coffee and sat on the porch swing. For the first time in 2 years, I felt something like peace. It lasted until Tuesday afternoon. My phone rang. "Brandon, I stared at the screen, debating whether to answer. Curiosity won. "Hello, Dad." His voice was syrupy sweet, false as a $3 bill. "Where are you? We're worried sick. You just disappeared. Mom would be so upset if she knew you were out there alone, using his dead mother to manipulate me." Classy. "I'm fine, Brandon. Where are you staying? Come home. Courtney feels terrible about what happened. We overreacted. Your room is waiting." I almost laughed. "I am home, Brandon. Don't call again." "Wait, what do you mean you're home? Did you rent an apartment?" "Dad, that's such a waste of money. Just come back. We can work this out." "Goodbye, Brandon." I hung up. He called back immediately. I declined the call. He called 6 more times. I turned off my phone. Wednesday morning, I turned my phone back on. 17 missed calls from Brandon. 12 voicemails. I deleted them without listening. Thursday, a registered letter arrived. Legal documents. I sat at my kitchen table and read through them with growing disbelief. Brandon had filed a petition for guardianship. The document claimed I was showing signs of dementia and incompetence. It said I had suddenly and irrationally abandoned my home and family, had been making erratic financial decisions, and may be a danger to myself. It requested the court grant Brandon full legal guardianship over my person and estate. The hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks away. I called Marcus immediately. He arrived at my cottage that evening, read the petition, and his face turned purple. "This is insane," he said. "You're clearly competent. This is harassment." "Can he win?" Marcus hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. "Riley, courts take these petitions seriously. Adult children don't usually file them without cause. The judge will order a psychological evaluation. If Brandon can convince the evaluator you're declining, even if you're not, it could go badly. What happens if he gets guardianship? He controls everything. Your finances, your medical decisions, where you live. He could sell this cottage. He could put you in a facility. You'd have almost no rights." I felt cold despite the warm evening. So what do? We fight. We get you evaluated by our own psychologist first. We document your competence. We expose his real motive, which is covering up theft. But Riley, this is going to be a battle. Over the next 2 weeks, I lived in a state of controlled anxiety. I underwent a court-ordered psychological evaluation with Dr. Hammond, a stern man who asked me hundreds of questions. What year is it? Who's the president? Count backward from 100 by 7s. Remember these 3 words and repeat them back in 5 minutes. Draw a clock showing 3:30. I answered everything correctly. Dr. Hammond seemed satisfied but non-committal. "You'll receive my report in a week," was all he said. Marcus prepared our defense. We gathered evidence of my competence. Bank statements showing careful financial management. Letters from Dorothy attesting to my clear decision-making during the house purchase, and statements from my new neighbors in Seabrook about my active participation in community life. But then, Brandon's attorney, a slick character named Gerald Voss, filed additional evidence. A private investigator had been following me. Photos showed me walking on the beach alone, apparently talking to myself. I'd actually been reciting Robert Frost poems I'd memorized in college, but the photos made me look confused. More photos showed me at the grocery store, staring at shelves. I'd been comparing prices and reading nutrition labels, but without context, it looked like confusion. Voss was building a narrative. Elderly man suddenly abandons home, isolates himself, displays concerning behavior. I met Patricia at the book club I'd joined at the Seabrook Community Center. She was 74, sharp as a tack, with white hair and fierce blue eyes. When I mentioned the guardianship petition, she shook her head grimly. "My sister went through this," she said. "Her daughter tried to get guardianship to control her trust fund. It's elder financial abuse disguised as concern. Even competent seniors lose these cases if the adult child is convincing enough." "What happened to your sister?" "She won, but it took 2 years and $50,000 in legal fees. The stress nearly killed her. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed listening to the ocean and wondering if I'd survive this fight. The morning of the hearing, I dressed in my best suit. The navy one I'd worn to business meetings back when I ran my plumbing company. Marcus met me at the courthouse, a stern brick building in the county seat 40 minutes from Seabrook. "Remember," Marcus said as we walked up the steps, "answer questions directly. Don't volunteer extra information. Stay calm no matter what they say." The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, the seal of the county on the wall. Judge Martha Hendricks presided, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s with graying hair pulled back severely. Brandon sat at the plaintiff's table with Gerald Voss. Courtney was there too, dressed conservatively in a gray dress. Her affair apparently paused for this performance. They both looked appropriately concerned. I felt sick looking at them. Voss presented Brandon's case first. He was smooth, painting a picture of a devoted son worried about his declining father. He showed the PI photos. He had Brandon testify. Brandon's performance was Oscar-worthy. "Your Honor, my father has always been so sharp, a brilliant businessman. But this past year he's changed. He forgets conversations we've had. He gets confused about what day it is. When I tried to help him organize his finances, he became paranoid and accused me of stealing. His voice actually broke. Then one night he just left, wouldn't tell us where he was going. We've been terrified he'd hurt himself or get taken advantage of by scammers." Courtney testified next, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "Riley has been like a father to me. I'm so worried about him. He seems angry all the time now. So isolated. This isn't the warm, loving man we knew." I wanted to stand up and shout that they were lying. Marcus's hand on my arm kept me seated. Then Voss dropped his bomb. "Your Honor, I'd like to submit medical records from Riley's physician, Dr. Nathan Carlson." He handed a folder to the bailiff, who delivered it to the judge. I leaned over to Marcus. "What medical records?" Marcus was already flipping through his copy. His face went white. "Riley, according to this, Dr. Carlson diagnosed you with early-stage cognitive decline 6 months ago and prescribed medication. That's impossible. I've never been diagnosed with that. I've never taken any such medication." Judge Hendricks reviewed the documents. "These appear to be official medical records from Dr. Carlson's office." Marcus stood. "Your Honor, may we have a recess? My client was unaware of these records and we need to verify their authenticity." The judge looked skeptical but granted a 30-minute recess. In the hallway, Marcus made frantic calls. He reached Dr. Carlson's office. Dr. Carlson himself got on the phone, and Marcus put it on speaker. "Mr. Riley?" Dr. Carlson's voice was shocked. "I never diagnosed you with cognitive decline. I saw you 4 months ago for a routine checkup. Your cognition was perfect. I never prescribed those medications. These records are fraudulent." Marcus's eyes lit up. "Doctor, can you testify to that?" "Absolutely. Someone forged my signature. This is identity theft and medical fraud." When court resumed, Marcus presented Dr. Carlson's testimony via phone. Dr. Carlson was unequivocal. The records were fake, but Voss was ready. "Your Honor, Dr. Carlson is clearly trying to protect himself from a malpractice claim. These records came through proper channels from his office. The signature and office stamp appear authentic." Marcus countered. "We request a forensic examination of these documents. Our expert will prove they're forgeries." Judge Hendricks looked troubled. She flipped through the disputed records, then looked at me. "Mr. Riley, approach the bench." I stood and walked forward, my legs steadier than I expected. "Mr. Riley, have you ever been diagnosed with dementia or cognitive impairment?" "No, Your Honor." "Do you take any medications for memory or cognitive issues?" "No, Your Honor. I take blood pressure medication and a statin for cholesterol. That's all." "Why do you think your son filed this petition?" I took a breath. This was the moment. "Your Honor, my son stole $74,700 from my savings account over 18 months. I have bank records showing unauthorized transfers. When I moved out of my home after he disrespected me, he panicked that I'd discover the theft and report him. This guardianship petition is an attempt to discredit me, control me, and ultimately take everything I have." The courtroom went silent. Brandon's face flushed red. Courtney stared at her hands. Judge Hendricks's expression hardened. "Mr. Marcus, do you have evidence of this alleged theft?" Marcus stepped forward with a folder. Yes, Your Honor. Bank statements showing transfers from Riley's account to Brandon's account. Riley never authorized these transfers. The password was obtained without permission. The judge reviewed the documents. Minutes passed. Finally, she looked up. This is deeply concerning. However, I need time to sort through competing claims. The medical records appear authentic on their face, but Dr. Carlson's testimony contradicts them. The theft allegations are serious, but unproven at this moment. She paused. I'm going to order a temporary limited guardianship. Brandon Riley will have oversight of major financial decisions, pending a full evidentiary hearing in 30 days. This is not a final determination of competency, merely a protective measure while we investigate further. My heart sank. Marcus stood immediately. Your Honor, that's exactly what the petitioner wants. This gives him control over the funds he allegedly stole. It's temporary and limited, Counselor. Mr. Riley Sr. retains control of his daily life and living situation. The full hearing will resolve this matter. Court adjourned. The gavel came down. Outside the courthouse, Brandon approached me, that smirk back on his face. See you soon, Dad. Don't make any big purchases without my permission. Marcus pulled me away before I could respond. That evening, Marcus called with worse news. Riley, someone accessed your investment account during the hearing, the one with $320,000. They initiated a transfer request. It's been flagged because of the guardianship order, but if Brandon's temporary guardianship holds, he could approve it himself. I sat on my porch, watching the sun set over the ocean, and felt the walls closing in. Brandon had been planning this for longer than I'd realized. The theft, the confrontation, the guardianship petition, all part of a coordinated attack. Can we prove the medical records are forged? I asked. Dr. Carlson will testify, but Voss will argue he's covering himself. We need the original documents from Dr. Carlson's office to do a forensic comparison. The problem is getting access to them, and we only have 30 days. I lay awake that night, listening to waves crash against the shore, wondering if I'd already lost this war. I threw myself into fighting back. Marcus hired a forensic document examiner, Dr. Ellen Cross, a meticulous woman who specialized in detecting forged signatures. She analyzed the disputed medical records and found inconsistencies in the signature pressure and ink flow suggesting forgery. But she needed the original documents from Dr. Carlson's office for a definitive comparison. Dr. Carlson cooperated fully, providing his genuine signature samples and office procedures. But getting the actual forged documents for examination was tied up in legal motions that Voss kept delaying. The stress was eating me alive. I'd always been healthy, worked physical jobs my whole life, ate reasonably well, never smoked. But now I woke up with headaches. My chest felt tight. I couldn't sleep more than 3 or 4 hours a night. 2 weeks after the hearing, I was taking my morning beach walk when a sharp pain shot through my chest and down my left arm. The world tilted. I stumbled and fell to my knees in the sand. A woman jogging past stopped. Sir? Sir? Are you okay? I couldn't answer. The pain was crushing. I couldn't breathe. The woman pulled out her phone. I'm calling 911. Stay with me. My name is Susan. I'm a retired nurse. You're having a cardiac event. Help is coming. The ambulance arrived within 8 minutes. Paramedics loaded me onto a gurney, started an IV, attached monitors. The siren wailed as we sped toward Seabrook General Hospital. In the emergency room, doctors ran tests, EKG, blood work, chest X-ray. Dr. Torres, the cardiologist, was a calm woman in her 40s, with steady hands and kind eyes. Mr. Riley, you've had what we call a cardiac event. Not a full myocardial infarction, a heart attack, but serious warning signs. Your troponin levels are elevated, suggesting heart muscle stress. Given your symptoms and test results, I want to keep you overnight for observation and further testing. Was it a heart attack or not? I asked. Borderline. Your heart is under significant stress. Have you been experiencing unusual stress lately? I almost laughed. You could say that. She reviewed my chart. Your blood pressure is elevated. Heart rate increased. When did this start? About 3 weeks ago. What happened 3 weeks ago? I told her about the guardianship petition. She listened, her expression growing concerned. Mr. Riley, stress is a significant cardiac risk factor, especially at your age. Whatever is happening legally, you need to find ways to manage the stress, or it could kill you. They admitted me to a regular room. I called Marcus from the hospital phone. Don't tell Brandon I'm here. But hospitals are required to notify legal guardians. By late afternoon, Brandon and Courtney walked into my room. Brandon's face showed concern, but his eyes gleamed with satisfaction. Dad, what happened? The hospital called me. They said you had a heart episode. I'm fine. You can leave. He ignored me and approached Dr. Torres in the hallway. I couldn't hear their conversation, but I saw Brandon gesturing, Dr. Torres nodding, checking her tablet. When Dr. Torres came back in, her demeanor had shifted slightly. She was still professional, but there was new caution in her eyes. Mr. Riley, your son mentioned you've been living alone. Do you have support at home? And there it was. Brandon poisoning the well. I have friends checking on me, I said carefully. After Dr. Torres left, Brandon came back in alone. Courtney waited in the hallway. Dad. His voice was quiet, almost gentle. It made my skin crawl. This is serious. You're not well. You need supervision. There are excellent assisted living facilities near here. Courtney and I have been researching them. Clean, safe, nurses on staff 24/7. Get out. I'm trying to help you. You're trying to put me in a home so you can steal the rest of my money. His mask slipped. Just for a second, I saw cold calculation in his eyes. Then the concerned son returned. That's the paranoia talking. The doctors need to know about this. He left. Through the doorway, I saw him talking to Dr. Torres again, gesturing toward me, shaking his head sadly. Marcus arrived within an hour. He found Brandon in the hallway, and words were exchanged. I couldn't hear them, but Marcus's face was red when he came into my room. He's telling the medical staff you're paranoid and delusional, Marcus said. He's using this hospital stay to build his case. Can he force me into a nursing home? Not yet. But at the next hearing, he'll present this episode as evidence you can't care for yourself independently. Combined with the forged medical records, it looks bad. I closed my eyes. The trap was tightening. Even my own body was betraying me. Dr. Torres discharged me the next morning with prescriptions for heart medication and strict instructions to reduce stress. The irony wasn't lost on me. Marcus drove me back to my cottage. As we pulled onto my street, I saw Brandon's car parked 3 houses down, just sitting there, watching. He's stalking you, Marcus said. He's trying to push me into another heart episode. If I die, he inherits everything without a guardianship fight. Marcus's jaw clenched. We need to move faster. I'm going to hire an investigator to look into Courtney's cousin. What cousin? Travis Kirkland. Works in medical billing. Courtney mentioned him at a family gathering years ago. If someone forged those medical records, they needed access to medical software and official forms. Travis would have that access. It was a thin lead, but it was something. Patricia visited that evening, with homemade soup. She sat with me on the porch, not saying much, just being there. Finally, she spoke. My sister won her case by going public. She called the local news, told them about elder financial abuse. The publicity put pressure on the judge to look harder at her daughter's real motives. Would that work for me? Maybe. Or it could backfire if Brandon spins you as a confused old man making wild accusations. It's a risk. Everything was a risk now. Marcus's investigator, Angela Reeves, started surveilling Travis Kirkland. She was good. Former police detective, now private. Within a week, she reported back. Travis is depositing large cash amounts. $5,000 here, $3,500 there. Way more than his salary supports. Someone's paying him. Can you prove it's Brandon? Not yet, but I'll keep watching. Meanwhile, Brandon filed another motion. He wanted full permanent guardianship and immediate nursing home placement, citing my medical crisis and inability to care for myself. The hearing was in 2 weeks. I sat on my porch that night, trying to do the breathing exercises Dr. Torres taught me. My chest felt tight again. I reached for the nitroglycerin tablets she'd prescribed. Let one dissolve under my tongue. The stress Brandon caused was literally killing me, and he was using my declining health as proof I needed his control. The trap was perfect. With 10 days until the critical hearing, Marcus and Angela worked around the clock. I tried to help, but Marcus insisted I rest. If you have another heart episode before the hearing, we're done. He was right, but sitting idle felt like surrendering. Angela followed Travis Kirkland for 6 days straight. On the 7th day, she hit pay dirt. She photographed Travis meeting Brandon at a small restaurant outside town. They sat in a back booth. Angela, using a telephoto lens from across the street, captured Brandon sliding a manila envelope across the table. Travis opened it, flipped through what appeared to be cash, and nodded. Angela showed me the photos. It's not definitive proof of the medical records forgery, but it shows they're connected and Brandon is paying him for something. Is it enough for court? Marcus studied the photos. It's circumstantial. Voss will argue it could be a loan, a business transaction, anything. We need Travis to talk. But Travis wasn't talking. Angela tried to approach him, but he ran. Literally ran to his car and drove off. Then Angela noticed something else during her surveillance. Courtney was often absent when Brandon thought she was home. Angela started following Courtney. Within 3 days, Angela had her story. Courtney was having an affair with a personal trainer named Justin Hayes. Expensive hotels, fancy dinners, shopping trips to boutiques where a dress cost more than most people's monthly rent. Angela traced the credit cards Courtney used. They were linked to accounts funded by my stolen money. She's spending your money on her affair, Angela said, showing me the evidence. I stared at the photos. Courtney laughing over champagne. Courtney kissing Justin in a parking garage. Courtney wearing a diamond bracelet I certainly never bought her. Does Brandon know? I asked. Doesn't appear to. She's been careful, but affairs always come out eventually. Marcus wanted to use this at the hearing. It destroys their credibility, shows what kind of people they really are. I hesitated. Despite everything, Brandon was still my son. Using his wife's affair against him felt cruel. Marcus grabbed my shoulders. Riley, sentiment is going to put you in a nursing home. Brandon isn't your little boy anymore. He's a man who stole from you, lied about you, and is trying to steal your freedom. We use every weapon we have. I finally nodded. But then Brandon found out about the affair on his own. Someone sent him anonymous photos, probably Justin's ex-girlfriend or a jealous friend. Brandon went ballistic. Angela happened to be watching my old house when the explosion happened. She heard shouting, things breaking. Neighbors came out onto their porches. Someone called the police. 2 squad cars showed up. Officers knocked on the door. Brandon answered, shirt untucked, face red. The officers talked to him, then to Courtney. No arrests were made, just a domestic disturbance. But the damage was done. Courtney moved out that night, went to stay with her sister. I expected this to chasten Brandon, maybe make him reconsider his priorities. Instead, it made him more dangerous. He called me at 11 o'clock that night. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. This is your fault. His voice was cold, dead, all of it. If you'd just given Courtney the damn room like I asked, none of this would have happened. She wouldn't have been so stressed. She wouldn't have cheated. My marriage wouldn't be over. Brandon, Courtney made her own choices. Shut up. Just shut up, old man. You think you're so smart, moving to your little beach cottage, playing the victim. But you're not the victim. You're selfish. You always have been. Mom saw it. She told me before she died that you cared more about your business than your family. That hurt worse than the chest pains. Your mother never said that. She did, and she was right. You know what? I'm glad I took your money. You don't deserve it. And in 9 days, when the judge gives me full guardianship, I'm putting you in the worst nursing home I can find. The kind that smells like piss and has 1 nurse for 50 patients. And I'm selling your precious cottage. You'll spend whatever years you have left in a shared room with some vegetable who doesn't even know his own name. And I'll be rich. The call ended. I sat in the darkness, shaking. Not from fear, from rage. Pure, clean rage. Marcus called the next morning with news. Travis Kirkland was arrested last night. Insurance fraud. Completely unrelated to our case. He's been running a scheme billing fake medical procedures through his employer's system. He's facing serious federal charges. My mind raced. Can we get to him now? Angela's already working on it. His public defender is appointed. Angela's reaching out. If Travis will admit to forging your medical records and testify against Brandon, we might be able to help him with his own case. It took 2 days to set up the meeting. Travis's public defender, a harried young woman named Jennifer Moss, brought him to Marcus's office. Travis was 32, thin, nervous. He wouldn't look at me. Marcus laid it out. Travis, you're facing 10 years in federal prison for the insurance fraud. But if you cooperate with us and testify truthfully about the medical records you forged for Brandon Riley, we'll provide testimony that you assisted in exposing elder abuse. That cooperation could significantly reduce your sentence. Travis stared at the floor. I could get killed. Brandon said if I ever talked, he'd make sure I regretted it. Brandon can't hurt you from where he's going, Marcus said. Once you testify, he'll be facing criminal charges of his own. Elder abuse, theft, conspiracy to commit fraud. Travis looked at me finally. I'm sorry. I needed the money. Brandon paid me $8,000. He gave me your information and told me what diagnosis to create. I used my access to the medical billing system to make it look official. I forged Dr. Carlson's signature from samples I found online. I'm sorry. There it was. The confession we needed. Will you testify in court? Marcus asked. Travis nodded miserably. Yeah, I'll testify. Marcus drafted an affidavit. Travis signed it. Jennifer Moss witnessed it. We had him, but the hearing was still 6 days away, and Voss was a skilled attorney. Nothing was certain. I underwent another psychological evaluation, this time with Dr. Linda Brennan, a psychologist Marcus hired. She was thorough, spending 3 hours with me. Her report was unequivocal. Fully competent, excellent cognitive function, no signs of dementia or impairment. I gathered more evidence of my capability. Letters from Patricia and other Seabrook neighbors. Bank statements showing organized finances. A statement from Dorothy at the real estate office about my clear decision-making during the house purchase. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Brandon had one more move planned. 3 days before the hearing, he filed an emergency motion claiming I was deteriorating rapidly and needed immediate placement. The motion was denied, but Judge Hendricks ordered me to appear in person and warned that she would question me extensively. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I walked on the beach at 2 a.m, the moon bright overhead, waves crashing in steady rhythm. I thought about my life. 67 years. Built a business from nothing. Raised a son alone after losing my wife. Tried to do right by people. And it had come to this, fighting my own son in court for the right to remain free. I thought about what Brandon had said, that his mother saw me as selfish. Was it true? Had I worked too much? Missed too many baseball games? Been too focused on providing rather than being present? Maybe. Probably. But I'd done my best with what I knew at the time. And Brandon was a grown man now. His choices were his own. The ocean rolled on, eternal and indifferent. I breathed in the salt air and made myself a promise. Win or lose tomorrow, I wouldn't give up. I'd keep fighting, because the alternative was unacceptable. I walked back to my cottage as dawn broke over the water, and I felt as ready as I'd ever be. The courtroom was more crowded than last time. Word had spread somehow. A few local reporters sat in the back row. Patricia was there, along with Susan from the beach and several other Seabrook neighbors. Their presence steadied me. Judge Hendricks took her seat. This is the full evidentiary hearing on the guardianship petition filed by Brandon Riley regarding his father, Riley. Mr. Voss, proceed. Voss presented Brandon's case again, but without Courtney there to support the narrative, it felt weaker. He emphasized my heart episode, trying to paint it as evidence of decline. Then Marcus stood up. Your Honor, I'd like to present new evidence that fundamentally changes this case. He introduced Travis Kirkland's affidavit. The courtroom went silent as Marcus read key portions aloud. Travis's confession that he'd forged the medical records, the details about Brandon paying him, the description of how he'd manipulated the medical billing system. Judge Hendrix's face darkened. She turned to Voss. "Counselor, do you have a response to this?" Voss stood, flustered for the first time. "Your Honor, Mr. Kirkland is a convicted fraudster trying to reduce his own sentence. His testimony is inherently unreliable." Marcus countered immediately. "Mr. Kirkland has nothing to gain by lying about this. He's already pleading guilty to federal charges. His cooperation in this case is being provided voluntarily." Then Marcus called Dr. Carlson to testify. Dr. Carlson was clear and forceful. "I never diagnosed Riley with cognitive decline. I never prescribed those medications. My signature on those records is forged. I've reviewed them with forensic experts, and we're prepared to demonstrate the forgery." Marcus introduced Dr. Ellen Cross's forensic analysis. She'd finally gotten access to the original forged documents and compared them to authentic samples. Her testimony was technical but damning. The signature pressure was wrong. The ink analysis showed different pens. The document formatting didn't match Dr. Carlson's standard forms. Then Marcus presented my recent psychological evaluation from Dr. Brennan. She testified that I demonstrated full cognitive competence, excellent memory, sound judgment, and no signs of impairment. Judge Hendrix asked me to approach. "Mr. Riley, I'm going to ask you some questions directly." For 20 minutes, she questioned me about my daily life, my finances, my decision-making. I answered each question clearly and specifically, citing dates, amounts, and details that demonstrated sharp memory and reasoning. Then she asked the crucial question, "Mr. Riley, why do you believe your son filed this guardianship petition?" I'd rehearsed this answer with Marcus, but in the moment, I spoke from my heart. "Your Honor, my son stole $74,700 from my savings account over 18 months without my knowledge or permission. I have bank records documenting every unauthorized transfer. When I moved out of my home after he demanded I give up my bedroom to his wife, he realized I would eventually discover the theft and report him to the authorities. The guardianship petition was an attempt to discredit me, make it appear I was confused and incompetent, so that any accusations I made would be dismissed as the ravings of a senile old man. His goal was to control me completely and take the remainder of my assets. I can provide evidence of all of this if you'll allow it." Judge Hendrix nodded. "Mr. Marcus, present your evidence regarding the alleged theft." Marcus showed the bank records. Every transfer from my account to Brandon's. The dates, the amounts, the fact that they occurred long before any guardianship petition, when Brandon was supposedly just a concerned son helping his father. The pattern was undeniable. Judge Hendrix turned to Brandon. "Mr. Riley, Brandon Riley, do you have an explanation for these transfers?" Brandon stood, sweating visibly. "My father authorized those transfers. He was helping me through financial difficulties. He's confused now and doesn't remember." "But Mr. Riley," the judge said coldly, "if your father was competent enough to authorize substantial monetary gifts totaling nearly $75,000, how can you now claim he was incompetent during that same period?" Brandon's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. Judge Hendrix looked at the evidence, at me, at Brandon, and her expression showed disgust. "I've seen enough. The petition for guardianship is denied completely and permanently. All temporary guardianship orders are immediately dissolved. Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for investigation of possible elder abuse, fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and theft." She looked directly at Brandon. "Young man, you should retain a criminal defense attorney immediately. Mr. Marcus, please ensure your client files a police report regarding the theft." She banged her gavel. "This hearing is adjourned." Relief flooded through me so powerfully I nearly collapsed. Marcus gripped my arm to steady me. Patricia and my other neighbors crowded around, congratulating me. Brandon stood at his table, pale and shaking. Voss was packing his briefcase, distancing himself from his client already. Outside the courthouse, Brandon caught up with me on the steps. His face was twisted with rage and something that might have been desperation. "You think you won?" You haven't won anything. I still have your house. You're never getting it back. Marcus stepped between us. Actually, Brandon, you're living in Riley's house without permission. That's called trespassing. Riley is giving you 72 hours to vacate, or he'll have you forcibly removed by the sheriff. I'll burn it down before I let him have it back. Marcus pulled out his phone, threatening to commit arson. Should I call the police right now, or would you like to reconsider that statement? Brandon stared at us, breathing hard. Then he turned and walked away. But he wasn't done. That evening, using connections from his previous business dealings, Brandon filed a mechanic's lien against my cottage. He claimed I owed him $250,000 for home renovations and caretaking services provided over the past 2 years. The lien was completely fraudulent, but it froze my ability to sell or refinance the property. Marcus called me with the news. It's harassment, pure and simple. We'll get it removed, but it'll take time. Brandon's tying up your property out of spite. How long? A few weeks, maybe a month. We have to file a motion to remove the lien, prove it's fraudulent, get a court date. It's a process. Brandon also filed a civil lawsuit, demanding repayment for his supposed services. The lawsuit sought a judgment that would force me to sell my cottage. I sat on my porch that night, exhausted beyond measure. The guardianship case was won, but the war continued. Then Angela called Marcus with urgent news. Riley's old house is being foreclosed on. Brandon stopped paying the property taxes and let the homeowner's insurance lapse. The mortgage company found out, accelerated the loan. The foreclosure process started a month ago. Sheriff's eviction is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Marcus called me immediately. Riley, you need to get to your old house tomorrow. Brandon's being evicted. You need to be there to secure the property. The irony was almost funny. Brandon had been so focused on stealing my money and controlling me that he'd neglected to actually maintain the house he wanted so badly. I drove to my old house the next morning, Marcus beside me. A sheriff's deputy met us there, along with a locksmith. Brandon's car was in the driveway, along with a moving truck. The house looked terrible. The lawn was overgrown with weeds nearly 2 feet tall. Paint peeled from the trim. Trash bags sat by the garage, ripped open by animals. The place I'd maintained immaculately for 32 years had been destroyed in less than a year. Brandon and Courtney, apparently briefly reunited in their shared crisis, were loading boxes into the truck. They both looked haggard. Courtney's hair was unwashed, no makeup. Brandon had lost weight, his clothes hanging loose. The deputy approached them. Folks, you need to be out in the next hour. The property is being returned to the legal owner. Brandon carried a box past me, wouldn't look at me. But as he loaded it into the truck, he muttered, "Hope you're happy, old man." I watched them work. Courtney dropped a box, and dishes shattered inside. She started crying. Brandon snapped at her. They argued briefly, then continued loading in grim silence. The eviction was completed by 11 o'clock. The deputy secured the premises and handed me the keys. "It's all yours, Mr. Riley. You might want to change the locks just to be safe." I walked through my house. It was a disaster. Holes in the walls, stained carpet. The kitchen cabinets hung crooked. The bathroom mirror was cracked. They'd gutted the place. Marcus stood beside me in the wreckage of my living room. "What do you want to do with it?" I looked around at the destruction, at the place where I'd raised my son, where my wife and I had built our life together. "Sell it. I don't want it anymore. Too many bad memories now." Over the next 3 weeks, Marcus worked to clear the fraudulent lien on my cottage. We presented evidence that Brandon never performed any renovations or caretaking services. We showed bank records proving I'd supported him, not the other way around. The lien was removed, and Brandon's lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice. The judge ordered Brandon to pay my attorney fees, nearly $18,000. The district attorney filed criminal charges against Brandon: elder financial abuse, theft by unauthorized transfer, conspiracy to commit fraud. Travis Kirkland testified against Brandon as part of his plea deal. The evidence was overwhelming. Brandon accepted a plea bargain: 5 years probation, full restitution of $74,700 to be paid in monthly installments, 200 hours of community service, mandatory anger management counseling, and a permanent restraining order preventing him from contacting me. Courtney divorced him. The divorce was bitter and expensive. Neither of them got much. They'd spent my stolen money on their lifestyle and Courtney's affair. The attorney fees consumed what little remained. Last I heard, they were both living in a cramped apartment across town, working low-paying jobs, trying to rebuild their lives from nothing. I sold my old house. The market had softened, and the house needed extensive repairs. But I still cleared $62,000 after paying off the remaining mortgage and covering legal fees. Combined with Brandon's restitution payments and my remaining savings, I was financially stable, but the money didn't matter as much anymore. I returned to my cottage in Seabrook and threw myself into making it truly home. I painted the shutters dark blue. I planted a small garden with tomatoes and herbs. I refinished the hardwood floors myself, working slowly and carefully, finding peace in the manual labor. I established routines, morning walks on the beach, coffee at the Seabreeze Cafe where I became friends with the owner, a widow named Helen who made the best cinnamon rolls I'd ever tasted, book club on Tuesday evenings, volunteering at the community center on Thursdays, teaching financial literacy to seniors, helping them avoid what happened to me. I made real friends. Patricia became like a sister, stopping by several evenings a week for dinner and conversation. Frank, the widower who fished off the pier, taught me to fish. Susan checked my blood pressure weekly and made sure I was taking my medications. My heart stabilized. The chest pains stopped. My blood pressure normalized. Dr. Torres was pleased with my progress. "Whatever you're doing," she said at a checkup, "keep doing it. You've added years to your life." 6 months after the trial, Patricia and I sat on my porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and purple. She'd brought fresh peach cobbler. We ate it straight from the pan with spoons. "Any regrets?" she asked. I thought about it carefully. I regret how things ended with Brandon. I regret that somewhere in his childhood or young adulthood, I failed to teach him integrity, failed to show him that character matters more than money. Maybe I was too focused on providing material things. Maybe I should have been tougher, let him face consequences instead of rescuing him from his mistakes. I'll carry those regrets. But you survived. You fought back. I did. And I learned something crucial. For years, I thought being a good father meant accommodating, sacrificing my needs, avoiding conflict. When Brandon demanded my room, I'd been giving in to smaller demands for 2 years. I taught him that disrespecting me had no consequences. Moving out wasn't just about the room. It was about finally drawing a line, saying this far and no further. Patricia nodded, understanding without words. "What would you tell someone else in your situation?" she asked. I gathered my thoughts. First, never let anyone, especially family, treat you as less than you deserve. Love doesn't mean accepting abuse. If someone who claims to love you is hurting you, taking from you, controlling you, that's not love. That's exploitation. I took another bite of cobbler. Second, protect yourself legally and financially. I should have monitored my accounts more carefully. I should have seen the theft earlier. Trust doesn't mean being careless. Verify, document, keep records. Third, don't be afraid to start over. People told me I was too old to move, too old to fight a guardianship case, too old to rebuild my life. They were wrong. Age doesn't determine capability. I was more capable at 67 than Brandon was at 35 because I had integrity, and he didn't. Patricia smiled. "Anything else?" "Yes. The hardest lesson. Sometimes the people who hurt us most are people we can't fix." I spent years trying to help Brandon, believing that more support, more money, more patience would transform him into the man I hoped he'd be. But I can't change another person, not even my own son. He has to choose to change himself. At some point, you have to let go of who you wish they were and accept who they actually are. And if who they are is toxic, you have to save yourself, even if it means walking away. The sun dipped below the horizon. The first stars appeared. We sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes with true friendship. That evening, I wrote in my journal, a habit I'd developed since moving to Seabrook. Today I realized something profound. I'm happier now than I was before any of this happened. Not because of what I lost, but because of what I gained. I gained clarity about who I am and what I deserve. I gained real friendships built on mutual respect, not blood obligation. I gained freedom from financial parasites, from toxic relationships, from the burden of trying to fix what cannot be fixed. I gained this cottage, this town, this life that's authentically mine. Brandon took my money, but in doing so, he inadvertently freed me. That's not a victory I wanted or sought, but it's a victory I'll accept. If I could return to that dinner table, knowing everything that would follow, the theft, the guardianship battle, the heart episode, the legal fees, the family rupture, would I still give the same calm answer? Yes, without hesitation. Because that moment when I stood up and said, "All right, Brandon, I'll be out by tomorrow," that was the moment I chose self-respect over people-pleasing. That was the moment I started reclaiming my life. The price was high, but my dignity, my freedom, and my peace are worth more than any amount of money. Brandon taught me that, though not in the way he intended. I closed the journal and walked onto the porch. The moon rose over the ocean, casting silver light across the waves. The air smelled of salt and night-blooming jasmine from my neighbor's garden. I could hear distant laughter from families walking on the beach. I thought about my journey, from successful businessman to stolen from father, from homeowner to evicted, from healthy to heart patient, from accused incompetent to vindicated victor. Each step painful, each step necessary. I thought about Brandon. Was he sitting in his apartment right now, bitter and angry, blaming me for his circumstances? Probably. Would he ever take responsibility for his choices, learn from his mistakes, become a better person? Maybe. Maybe not. It was no longer my burden to carry. I thought about Courtney, about Travis, about all the people who'd been pulled into this drama. Lives changed, some ruined, all because of greed and entitlement. But I also thought about Patricia, Susan, Frank, Helen, Dorothy, Marcus, Angela, Dr. Torres, Judge Hendricks. People who'd helped me, supported me, fought for me. Strangers who became friends. Professionals who did their jobs with integrity. A system that, despite its flaws, ultimately delivered justice. The good outweighed the bad. Not by much, but enough. I sat in my porch swing and let the peace of the evening settle over me. 67 years old. Scarred but unbroken. Wounded but healing. Older but wiser. And home. Finally. Truly home. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your self-respect? Have you faced a moment where you had to decide whether to accommodate someone who was hurting you or stand up and walk away, even if it meant losing that relationship forever? It's one of the hardest decisions we face as human beings, especially when family is involved. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you experienced something similar? How did you handle it? What would you have done in my situation? If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button. It helps more people find these stories, and maybe helps someone who's going through their own struggle right now. And consider subscribing to the channel. We share stories about real-life challenges and how everyday people overcome them. Share this video with someone who might need to hear it. Sometimes we all need a reminder that it's never too late to choose ourselves, to start over, to reclaim our dignity. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it brought you something valuable, whether that's entertainment, insight, or just the comfort of knowing you're not alone in facing difficult family dynamics. May you always have the courage to choose self-respect. May you know when to fight and when to walk away. And may you find your own cottage by the sea, whatever form that takes in your life. Take care of yourselves out there. Until next time.